The Navigating Disability podcast often discusses topics including disability, injury, mental health, and mentions of sensitive issues such as trauma and suicide. Listener discretion is advised. Please take care while listening. Welcome to Navigating Disability. Today we're thrilled to be joined by Morgan Fitzpatrick, advocate, leader, and champion for inclusion and early childhood development. Through her work, Morgan is driving change in how we support children with developmental delays and their families. She also brings powerful lived experience of hidden disabilities, including POTS and Ehlers-Danlos Syndrome, shedding light on the challenges and strength behind conditions that aren't always visible. Join us as we talk early supports, advocacy, and living with invisible disability. Welcome, Morgan. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Kate. Thank you, Jen, for having me. I'm really excited to have this conversation.
You mentioned when we were chatting before recording about this being your first time that you've really spoken about yourself and what you've faced.
Both of the conditions I have kind of sub-conditions, and so it was a very complex picture through childhood about what was going on for me. So it took many years to actually get a diagnosis, and then it's been iterative from there, started with a POTS diagnosis and then ended up with Ehlers-Danlos like years later. And so I think because it was really complex, there's been a pretty significant life impacts. I think as those diagnoses came in, I found with family, like I became the sick one in the family. And so everybody's like constantly worried about me and asking about me. And I didn't want that to define me. And so I think I've just very much outside of like those immediately close to me, not talked about it because I didn't want that to define me. It already does every single day. I feel it, but I didn't want others to kind of look at me any differently or approach things differently. So like there's always a question like in work, like, do you need any accommodations? And it's like, yes, I do. I need a lot actually, but I'm not going to say that unless I have to. Unless I absolutely have to, I'm not going to. So yes, I think I have just very much to my immediate family and those that need to know. And in a work context, very few people would have this. So it is interesting, and I appreciate the opportunity to talk about it because I think there's probably a lot of people out there like me who don't actually talk about what's going on for them, but that doesn't mean they're not really struggling.
And after today, everybody knows.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah. So at what age were you first diagnosed?
So the POTS was like 2021, but I was symptomatic from like age 11. So from my experience was like literally I'd wake up every morning, I'd faint, and then I'd have to get ready. And so I just adjusted my life to that. I know this will sound really silly. I actually thought everybody got up and fainted because I didn't know any different. So I just would get up like 2 hours early to get ready for school. So I would have time to get up, get in the shower, faint, lay down for a while, slowly work my way up, get up, not feel great, get back down, and do that back and forth until I could get ready and then go out for the day. And that went on for years.
Were your family aware of you?
Yeah, and they would like, because it would occasionally happen at school, like we'd be outside and then I'd faint. And then, of course, they'd call an ambulance and then my parents would come and I'd go to the hospital. And they did all sorts of tests, like all sorts of tests. I had sleep studies and I had heart rate monitors and all sorts of things. But nobody could work out what it was. And we were in the US in a very regional, like mountainous, small community, not a lot of access to kind of like cutting edge medical. So it wasn't until I've got another heart condition, which is an arrhythmia. And so I had this arrhythmia when I was in college, and it was like my heart was going like 230 beats a minute. It was insane. And I called the ambulance and they come out, and of course they look at me and they think, oh, it's exam period, you get stressed. And I'm like, no, I think something's going on here. And they're like, oh, I'm sure you just need to calm down a bit. I said, no, I think something's wrong. Like, I think you need to take me in. And they put me in the ambulance and they put me, hook me up. And they go, oh my God, your heart's really, this is not right. We're going to have to stop your heart right here and reset your heart.
Scary.
stop my heart like in my driveway and reset it. But I'm like, I need to be a little bit more firm about my needs because they were going to ignore me. And actually, 10 minutes later, they're realizing they actually have to stop my heart. So, long story short, that then led me to a referral to a specialist at a big university about 3 hours away from where we lived. And when I got to them and I explained what was going on, I presumed that was going to explain all the fainting I've had my whole life, right? And I'm like, okay, finally we know. So I'm thinking, this is it. Like we've explained it all. Amazing. And I walked into
Okay.
the doctor and he goes, yeah, you definitely have that, but you've also very clearly got. And so they did all the tests they needed to do. And I remember driving home from those tests with my mom in the car and Googling all the symptoms. And I'm like, oh my God, this explains so much because it's not just the fainting. There's so many other things that come with it. And it was this moment of clarity of like, I finally feel understood and validated after all these years, people assuming that I'm not eating enough and that's why I'm fainting, or I'm overreacting and that's why I'm fainting. People will need to explain it, so they explain it with these rational things or low blood sugar, whatever it is. So it was really validating to kind of have that finally. Now we know it's not that rare, like it's becoming much more known. COVID has certainly brought a lot of attention to dysautonomia, but yeah, back then it was very, very rare, and they kind of said, oh, there's nothing you can do. So it's been a real journey, I think, as society, the medical community has learned more about the conditions too, to then get treatments right and kind of figure out what works best. And they're still really trying to figure it out. I mean, there's a lot we don't know, I think, still. And that's interesting. You know, I'm on all the forums, I'm on the Facebook groups, and I found those to be really powerful. And people are posting, they're like, oh, I do this protocol for my POTS. I'm like, what? Sorry, what? What is that? There's so much research happening. It's amazing that they're getting advancements and there's a better understanding of how to treat and manage. The Ehlers-Danlos didn't come till later. I just happened to say to my cardiologist one day, I said, oh, I got like all this bruising like all over me. Like, I know that's part of my POTS, but like, is there anything we can do? Like, it looks like I've been like hit by a bus. And he said, that's not POTS. What are you talking about? And I said, oh, I'm like covered in bruises all the time. Like I just wake up and I've got bruises and I don't know where they're coming from. And like people have commented on this for ages. And he said, we probably should look at that. That's probably something else.
How long was that
Yeah.
after the POTS?
That was probably, oh gosh, like 10 years, long time. But what they know, so what I understand is they're finding some genetic connections because I've got mast cell activation disorder, which is effectively where the cells in your body produce too much histamine, they overreact. And that dilates your blood vessels, which doesn't help someone with POTS whose blood vessels don't constrict really well. And Ehlers-Danlos is all about the connective tissue. So that means my blood vessels aren't constricting well because the connective tissue is not working well. So they are finding some genetic links between the three of those. So it makes sense. I am hypermobile, and so it's everybody in my family. It makes perfect sense now. The science is evolving. So those connections may not have even been known when I was diagnosed because it was so long ago. I'm 37 now. I was diagnosed at 20 or 21. Things have evolved a lot. So the fact that that wasn't considered at that time is probably just a reflection on what was known at the time. I remember being told to treat this, I needed to carry around 8 big Gatorades, like the really big ones. And I just needed to carry those around all day and drink those all day. And that was like going to be my treatment. I'm sure people were like, what she likes Gatorade. She must love Gatorade.
Needs a sugar hit.
Yeah, so it's been a journey, definitely been a journey.
There must be times in your life where you've like, oh my God, how did you get past those types of days?
You know, I
Let's
think
push forward.
I think in some ways, the benefit of having such a long period without a diagnosis and just having to live with what it is, I assumed it's so normal. Like when you're in that situation, and this would be anybody with a disability, this is your life. This is what your experience is every single day. You don't have a choice. You just got to get on with it. There's no option just to be like, I don't like this. So I think because I was constantly adapting to that and going, oh, it is what it is. So I've got to find a way around it so I can get on with my day, get to school, do what I need to do. I think that just embedded that philosophy in my mind. And so I've continued to apply that, so I can be very unwell. Like the worst part of my POTS, there's lots of things that come with POTS, but the worst part is the fainting. It's very inconvenient to not be able to keep your blood pressure up and not be able to stand up. Like on my tilt test, as like, just to give you reference, this is where they measure all your stats lying down, and then they pull you upright, and then they measure your stats. And they hold you there for a long period of time. And I start to feel very faint and unwell. And I'm fighting through. I don't want to, like, it's a very mental game. I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to faint. Anyway, I got the results after. My blood pressure was 40 over 22. And I was fully,
Wow.
totally conscious. This is like what is happening to me on a daily basis. I am trying not to faint and absolutely awful. It's super inconvenient. I guess you can't control when it's happening. It's worse at particular times. I know the triggers, but I can't control when I'm going to get a flare of it. I have kids, I have work. I don't have a choice. Because of that long period without diagnosis where I just had to get on with it, I continue to just apply that. And it's tough. It takes a lot of mental strength. So if I'm in one of those flares, one of the things I know I have to do is exercise, physical weights, like it has to be weights. And so I will literally do like 5 minutes of lifting a little bit of weights and then full body shaky, like in the corner on the ground. But then I've got to like get myself to a point that I can get up and do that again, push myself to my absolute limit. Okay, lay back down. And I just got to keep pushing myself. And it's like over time, I've learned how to just keep pushing through until I can build that muscle strength back up so my body can work with me. But I have to use my mental strength to go, I can't, like, the other option is, okay, just go lay on the couch and not push through, not do that. But it will get worse and worse and worse. And then getting back from that is so hard. So as soon as I feel the flare coming and I have a bad day, I'm straight onto it. Otherwise, I could just end up bed
How
bound.
often do you have flares, Morgan? Roughly.
It varies. It could sometimes they're just a couple of days, like a week. So if I'm fighting a bug, like if I'm kids, I've got two young kids, they bring this.
They love to share everything, don't they?
They're so sweet. God love them. 3 to 7 days of flare. Like that's my body fighting it, and it triggers it. An immune reaction will trigger it for sure. If I've let myself get out of an exercise routine and something come on, like if I go a couple weeks without doing some weight training, I could be pushing into like a couple week flare that goes on for a while. And that's easy to happen because, right, like I'm working, I've got kids, like fitting in exercise is like hard to do. So that's when I really have to like kick myself into gear and be like, no, I got to get on top of this. I don't know, like probably on average every month there's one of some frequency or duration, so it doesn't have a big impact. Even when there's not a flare, there's like symptoms though. It's like one of those things where like just because I'm not fainting doesn't mean it's not there. So like if I'm doing a presentation at a conference, my body's really struggling. So next time anybody sees me, you'll be like, oh, geez, now I see it now. But my body is really overreacting. I'm struggling, even if I'm really, really well. It just doesn't cope well.
How do you go when you're in a flare up and you're in a lot of pain and the fainting? Is there someone there that do you need assistance with your kids, or have you scaffolded yourself where you just push on like all mums and just get it done?
I've got a super supportive husband who understands, and we've been together a long time, only ever known me to have this. So he knows if I say I'm potsy, he knows what to do. He knows he's just got to jump in. And the kids know actually as well. So, I've had times where like, we're struggling through, I'm trying to push through. I need to like carry a kid downstairs, and then suddenly it's like, no, I can't do this. And the kids know if I say mommy's not feeling well, we need to sit down, they're like, boom, they get it. And that's actually really remarkable, I think, for their age. They're 1 and 3, but they know, like they actually know. We've had one time where like my son was just like, "Nah, whatever, I'm running." And then I'm like laying on the floor and he's like, Mommy, but he remembers. And so he understands, like, now if I say Mommy doesn't feel well, that is code for we just stop. We just have to stop, like, and it's immediate. But I think, yeah, I think that's where you have to just really let the people immediately close to you know. If I'm in like a public place and something happens, I know how to manage myself. I know how to get myself back to rights where I can get on with whatever I need to do. But you'll see me just move over to the side and find a chair, or I will move myself to a position I need to be in. I know when I'm
going to faint.
Yeah, it's not like a boom, you're gone.
Your body sends signals.
Yeah, I know it's coming and I've got to stop.
Can you stop yourself from fainting?
I can if I can get myself into the right position, but if I can't like get either sitting or laying down, no hope it's happening. So I absolutely have to sit down very quickly or lay down if need be. And if it's really bad, like, I've been in a restaurant, legs up on the table, like, sorry, but your choice. Would you rather me faint or would you rather me have my feet on your table? Yeah, it's definitely like a gravity thing.
With your experience and what you've been through 10, 20 years of actually not knowing what was wrong and you were considering it normal, if you were talking to other people out there that were your younger self, what advice would you give them about what they're experiencing and what they need to do?
Yeah, I think the main thing is to figure out what works for you. You got to find your recipe. Like, I know what my recipe is. It's hydrolyte, it's weighted exercises. I know what I need to do when a flare is coming on. Others have to figure out what that is for them, what works most effectively for them. Because there's different triggers for this, and everybody's cause might be different. So, how you then treat it is different. And so, spending the time to figure that out and get that insight will help you kind of figure out what works for you. I've had a few people I've known recently who've had long COVID come on, and long COVID is very similar in profile to POTS. I think some of the mechanisms might be a bit different, but there's a lot of research now happening around long COVID as a dysautonomia and in that kind of family. And so I've had a few people I've known with that, and like they're bedbound, like they had to quit their jobs, a year of recovery. It's awful. It's absolutely awful. And I can relate because if this hits you out of the blue, you would be like, what in the world? Like, I was fine yesterday. Why can I not just do what I want to do? And so I always say to them, like, you will get back to that. Like, have hope. Like, I have a full-time job. I live a very active, wonderful life. You can absolutely work through it. But, again, you've got to figure out what's going to work for you to make that happen. So it's really empowering when you can figure that out because then like you don't have these things come on and go, oh God, I'm stuck with this. Come on and go, okay, I'm going to have a tough go, but I can do this and I know what works and I'm going to do it. And so I think, yeah, I think with anything, I would say, yeah, figure out your recipe, but also like you can work through it. And I know some people are incredibly disabled. There's lots of people who end up in wheelchairs with POTS or even long COVID. Like it is awful, but I think if you can figure out what works for you, there's hope at the end of the tunnel. You can live a very fulfilling life.
What do you wish more people knew about it or would understand about people living with a disability?
Listen, I think to me, yeah, I'm one of those people, and I love how you've crossed out dis and disability. Like, if we could find collectively as a community a different word, that would be amazing. To me, I just feel like we're all human beings and we've all got our own, like, quirks and things that are going on. Like, so for me, I've got these things, but other people have all sorts of other things, and
Yeah, I've got autism and ADHD. But like you, I'm full. I wouldn't say fully functioning. I'm functioning, and I've got a job, and
yeah,
I've got a family.
it's debatable, fully functioning.
Just get it done, right? They see the word disability and like you're useless. And it's like, no, we're a contributing part of society. We're human at the end of the day.
Name me someone who doesn't have something that they're
Mm.
working through or managing. Name me some person because I'd love to meet them. I feel like we all have something. I've got ADHD too, if you haven't worked out from my bouncing around. Like, it's a superpower. Yeah, like I think about things a bit differently, but it is a superpower. And I think if we start looking at people through the lens of you're a human being and you've got this is what you
Mm.
like, it's just your needs. Like, and these are the things that make you really uniquely you. I think we just have to start thinking about it that way. And I think it's so frustrating when it's seen as like the impairment notices with the NDIS at the moment. I've given them lots of feedback. I'm like, I really don't. I know where it's come from. I know it's an international classification of functioning, but impairment is such a terrible word. Like things I struggle with, that I can get comfortable with that kind of language. It's not an impairment. It's just what I need a bit of extra support with.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I think really shifting to more of a strengths-based, like human lens to go, we're all humans, we've all got different needs, different areas we need support with, but also different strengths and things that
All got different abilities, and let's work on those things to be the best version of ourselves.
100%. I think we could just like collectively as a society get rid of the word disability and that we could all be absolutely fine and look at each other with a lot more humanness.
And I think that's one of the big issues with the NDIS, and this podcast is not about the NDIS, but it's so deficit based. You know, the better you do, the less money you get. So then you've got to be as bad as you can.
Yeah.
How did your disability journey affect what you're doing now? Did it have any effect on your where you are now?
It's so interesting. I didn't consciously choose to work in disability services, but I've always wanted to work with kids and families. And so for me, it's been about I just want every child to get the best start in life possible, regardless of their ability, culture, background. I want them to get a really good start in life. And because of that, I'm a really big believer in the early intervention because I know the impact of that across a lifespan. And I think my background in psychology, they do start to do some of that research around kind of trauma and the different developmental trauma that children can experience and how that impacts the medical side as well. And you can't help but go, God, if we could make sure they've got really strong childhoods and we're not activating genes that don't need to be activated, so then they have better medical and life outcomes across all domains. And so I'm just really passionate about that. I have no idea why I've had all these genes turned on, by the way. I'm not suggesting that by any means, but I just think if we can help kids get the best start, then next generation's better, and then the next generation's better, and then the next, and it's just huge societal impact. But I don't think it directly did, connect for me. And I think it's been a journey, just like the diagnosis has been a journey. It's been a journey for me to kind of come to terms with it. Hence, even being here today and kind of opening up about, the things that most people don't see when they get to know me.
You said something right at the start, which I loved, about when you had an answer, you finally felt validated. And I actually felt that when my son was finally diagnosed with autism, because it had been such a hard journey and we had been fobbed off and not believed and everything else. And when we got the diagnosis, I sat there and cried because finally I felt validated in everything I was saying and seeing and hearing, but a lot of people weren't believing. I think it's really important, and I say to all of our mothers, parents, caregivers, to trust your gut. You know that child better than anybody else.
Yeah.
And you need to trust where you're headed. Listen to all the specialists, absolutely. But if you're not comfortable, move on. Find another one that you are.
Absolutely. I think both as a parent, but also as someone who's had my own journey, you know yourself better than anyone. You know when something's wrong. And if I could count, and I'm sure it's the same for you, if I could count the number of times that I've been told nothing's wrong, or it's just this, or it's just that, and then it ends up being something different and actually something quite serious.
Over it.
Yeah, how we make that change in the medical profession. They're so knowledgeable. They have so much, but at the end of the day, you are the expert in your lives. You live it every day. You know the ins and outs. They're getting a snippet. And so you do have to trust your gut because you do know the
I'm
reality.
also a firm believer that medical specialists, and I'm not putting them down because they are so well educated, they can read a textbook from front or back, but if they have no lived experience of what you're going through, no person can truly understand what it's like for you except for you.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? But to not, you have to have someone you know or someone, in your family to get to really know and understand what someone's going through.
Yeah.
And then you'd have less dismissal, right? When someone comes to you. And I think that's depletes people's independence too, because they end up giving up in search for what is actually going on. Because they're like, well, no one believes me anyway.
And it's so dangerous when they do that because then if there is something really going on that could be better, you're taking away that hope from them. So if they can get on to someone who actually understands and takes them seriously, then they can get the help they need. If they're doing that, there's something going on they need support with. And I think we should be validating that. It's such a fascinating thing because we talk a lot in the early childhood space about like, do you really need a diagnosis? But can I just say, as a parent who's on this journey, you do, because actually it validates it to everyone else that what you're talking about is real, and it gives you some weight to say, I need help, and to be taken seriously. And so it is such a tricky thing. Like, I think none of us want the label, but unfortunately, we live in a society that you kind of need it in order to be getting the support you need and to be taken seriously as well. So if I were to turn up to people and just go, I faint every day, they'd be like, "Well, you should probably work on whatever." Whereas if I turn up and go, I've got POTS, the doctors stop and they listen and they understand and they take that seriously.
There's an acceptance there.
Yeah.
Why were you not open with it?
I think my experience is people really start to treat you with kid gloves. Like it probably is scary. And it's not scary for me because I'm livid, but it probably is scary for other people to feel like, oh my God, she could just faint. Like they don't have control over that. What do I do? Like, I think that puts them in a really vulnerable position of like, what happens if she's at work and she just faints? I think one, the reaction to that is like very like, oh my God, I'm scared. But two, they then will treat you. I've found people just treat you a bit differently. So I think that's one. And I think I really just want to be me and like not have that kind of label.
But has that been detrimental to you in the workplace in terms of any accommodations that you might need? What sort of accommodations would you look for?
Yeah, listen, I've definitely had periods I've needed support and I've had to open up to whoever I'm working for. I've been lucky that when those really severe instances have happened, I've had very supportive managers who support me, responded to really well. And so, yeah, maybe it's my own fear that I don't do that more broadly. But I've had, for instance, in my first CEO role, I had like 6 months that I actually really struggled to get out of bed. It had never been that bad in my entire life. But I think a combination of long hours, a lot of stress, some illness. I got sick with something that just seemed to have triggered it. And it was to the point where POTS is all these different things, as I mentioned, like it slows down your digestive system. So my stomach wasn't empty. So I was like vomiting and super sick. I was having issues with like spasms in my esophagus. My voice, like my brain wasn't connecting, like I couldn't talk. It was like an apraxia of sorts. It was really intense. And so I was struggling. And this is a big role. Like I need to be there for my team. And I had this amazing chair who just said, you know what, you work when you can. And when you can't, you can't. And she gave me a lot of flexibility. And this was pre-COVID, before we were working at home. So I did lots of work from home when I needed to. There were some days I could do 2 hours, some days I could do 7. It just depended on day to day. And I needed the flexibility to just respond to where I was at each day. I can work for 2 hours and then I have a really bad flare, and then I could get back on maybe later and do a couple of hours. It's so unpredictable. And so she gave me so much flexibility. And slowly I figured my way out of that and got back to rights and was able to sort myself out. The accommodations are hard to predict because you don't know when you're going to have a flare and you don't know exactly how long it's going to go and what it's going to look like and what symptoms are going to come with that. And so, yeah, I think you need flexibility. And the other thing is medical appointments, like, oh my goodness, all the time. So I need to be in a role that will enable me to go out for 3 hours. Yesterday, I literally worked at the hospital all day because I had back-to-back meetings, but I had a specialist appointment I needed to be able to be there for. And so I'm grateful that I work in a role where I can do that. And people don't mind if I log in for meetings. But yeah, like some physical accommodations, I need to make sure I've kind of got that in hand. Don't sign me up to do, an all-day standing event at work. That's not going to work. So, I do have to certainly communicate enough to make sure those things are in place. But I've also consciously chosen jobs that will enable me to have the flexibility. I could never be an early childhood educator where I'm on my feet all day and couldn't duck out for appointments, for instance. I've had to choose a career that will give me flexibility to do what I need to. And it is, it's a lot on the workplace because, yeah, as I said, I've got regular appointments I've got to be at. I've got neurologist, immunologist, cardiologist, and then a whole suite of other specialists for other things. Like, they're pretty regular appointment schedule.
But do you bring that up before you're employed or at the interview or?
Yeah, good question. I think I'm trying to think to my last role because I've been in my current role for like 6 years now. I feel like it's kind of come up just naturally over time. So I feel like I don't remember in the interview process having the conversation, but I think then once I started, But I started obviously knowing I'd have some flexibility with hours. Then there's conversations around, listen, I've got an appointment coming up. Are you okay that I handle it this way? And then that's okay. And then we kind of build on it from there. Yeah, but I think that's where I've been hesitant as well, because I think you worry if you put all that down, people will be like, oh God, you kind of want to prove yourself first that actually it's not going to have an impact. I've got everything in hand, but I am going to need to be in and out a little bit. So yeah, I think it's one of those things where you almost have to build a little bit of trust to know how people are going to respond to it, but then also not put yourself in a position that you're in a role where that, of course, that request would never be able to be approved. Yeah.
So what does the future hold for you in business, in just life in general?
Listen, I think we've got, as I said, 2 young kids. And so we're certainly at a stage where we're kind of thinking about how do we get the flexibility to be there for the kids before, after school, the activities, like it's a new phase for us.
Busy one.
Yeah,
It's a busy one.
evident.
So I think we're definitely kind of looking at both of our jobs and how can we make sure that's going to work. And, if we can tag team day to day. The thing is, I absolutely love my work, like absolutely love it. And I've got an amazingly supportive board that just gets it and they just trust. They know me, they know I'll get things done. I'm one of those people that just works all the time. So who cares if I'm out for 2 hours because I'm on all day Saturday? Like it's fine. And they know that. So, I think that's something not to be taken for granted. And we're in, as we kind of said before, there's a lot of reform happening in this space. And I think even the new minister, this is a really interesting time because potentially with that selection, it means the opportunity to think about the space I work in as early childhood. Think about some of the gaps for families in that diagnostic journey. There's a big gap between the moment you realize there's maybe some concern around how your child's developing and them having access to the NDIS. And the community health and Medicare system, while there's some supports there, the out-of-pocket gap for a lot of people is too much, right? And so there's a lot of system redesign that needs to happen to make sure the family journey is one that's supportive, gets timely advice to families. And so I'm really passionate about making sure we kind of see that change through and get a solution that works. And I'm really involved in advocacy with that. So at least for the immediate term, I'm going to be here advocating for that. And I love the org I'm with and the work we're doing, so I anticipate being there. Moving forward, I have to think about roles that work with my needs. So into the future, would love to be in some kind of policy type role, but it's got to be something where I can work at home regularly and have that flexibility. So yeah, it narrows your options.
Work from home is such a big thing now.
Most places
COVID,
embrace it.
massive change. Morgan, I can't thank you enough. It's been fantastic speaking to you. Thank you so much for allowing us to be the first person to share your journey. Any last words for our listeners?
The only thing in terms of invisible disabilities, just making sure there's that community consciousness. Not everybody always sees it. If I could end with anything, it's just going back to that conversation we talked about before, and let's just think of everybody as humans and approach it from like, what do you need? How can I best support you in life? Because I think we've all got something. And then I think the other thing I would say is for any listener that does have POTS and is going through a rough time, particularly in that early stage of your diagnosis, like there is hope. Like you definitely can work it through. Make sure you've got the right team around you, like we said. Make sure you've got medical professionals who are listening and believing you and helping you to figure out what your recipe for success is. Because I can promise you, once you figure that out, it is game changing. And it opens a lot of doors to having the life you want. So yeah, I hope that kind of seeing my journey and that I can manage that gives other people hope.
And looking at you today and where you're at, it would have to give people hope. Thank you so much for your time. We will be sharing your details with our listeners in case anyone wants to reach out.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Morgan.
Thanks, Jen. Thanks, Kate.